Up for a couple of questions.
Sure.
We'll just have a little bit of time for some audience Q&A, but I actually would like to take a moderator's prerogative here and ask a couple. But first of all, one of the things that's amazing about FedEx to me, as somebody who's been in the industry a long time, is you just continue to sort of be at the leading edge in terms of technology deployment. It was great to see that timeline, and then you're doing some work now with the SenseAware that continues to be leading edge. And the other piece of it is just as a company, when you have products and services, whether it's email that could have sort of displaced a lot of your legacy business, you find ways to continue to leverage the competitive advantage you have with networks and distribution points. And it's sort of like if you look at the digital media space as a comparable example, look at how Netflix has done compared to Blockbuster. Netflix is a survivor, and you're in your space, the Netflix of the packaged business, and so it's great. But I'd just love to hear a little bit more about SenseAware, just in terms of what are some of the industries or use cases that have sort of been the early adopters or the fastest adopters of that technology?
Well, we had to make some choices because there was so much, the notion of high-value shipments was where all of the early adopters showed up. So they showed up in the jewelry industry, they showed up in the banking industry, still to this day, there are pretty significant movements of data tapes that have, lots and lots of personally identifiable information. We've all heard, horror stories about a shipment being lost and brands being damaged because, unfortunately, none of those, and I say fortunately, none of those have happened to us, but, it is something that they all got interested in. But what emerged as the real game changer industry, and where we've put our focus on with the earliest rollouts of SenseAware, is life sciences. And a lot of that came out of here, out of South San Francisco and out of the biotech industry that was emerging here. Memphis also has an interesting characteristic that a lot of life sciences companies choose to put their distribution centers in Memphis because of the extraordinary reach that we have. So there are a number of really big-time medical device manufacturing companies and pharma companies that distribute out of Memphis, primarily because FedEx is there, and you can get to pretty much anywhere in the world. The Memphis airport is actually the world's busiest air cargo airport. People don't really, they think of, well, that's got to be O'Hare or Pudong or something like that. But Memphis actually moves more tons of air freight than any place else in the world because the network, we don't move everything through Memphis like we used to. It's just one node, but it is the most connected node that's out there. So today, life sciences, pharma, biotech, whether it's Genentech or genomic health or lots of companies that are out here that really need this kind of centralized distribution of very high value shipments that need to be tracked. Those aren't the earliest customers, but those are the types of customers that we would seek out in SenseAware.
Right, so it's a fascinating leverage of location and mobile networks in terms of your business. So that's great to hear about. We have a couple of minutes for some questions. Yes, sir, you had a question.
Rob, I was wondering about something that you didn't talk about that I imagine must be extremely important to you, and that is your address and addressing systems. In the United States in particular, where does your address source come from? How do you upgrade it? Do you capture structure points with GPS, or how does that part of your infrastructure work?
Yeah, it's extremely important for us resolving to addresses. We buy a lot of address services. We reconcile across a number of different services that are out there right now. But one of the things that we find we have to do is have a layer of that data that is our own corrections to that set of address services and sources out there. So because we have a lot of information that we would consider ancillary to a basic latitude, longitude address service, like where does this particular customer like to have their shipments left? Where do you access the shipping dock in a big scale address? How do you, when does the, simple information like when is there, receiving room closed because the guy's off on a coffee break. So we have a few layers of our own that we utilize to correct addresses, to put information together. We also like to categorize addresses between business and residential. So we have some identifiers out there that we layer onto this ourselves. But as part of our GPS technologies out there, we have the core foundational service that I offer to the business is called the Enterprise Address Service, the EAS, and that's what we reconcile addresses around inside the business is the EAS, and all of those different layers. Various sales has different needs for that address than does operations, than does the billing department.
Okay, another question. Yes, right here. Just grab a mic.
Mr. Carter, I was going to ask you, there seemed to be a paradigm shift happening with location technology in your presentation. You showed the initial browser as being a pull. You find out, you go to the browser, you find out where the package is, it comes back. Is there a paradigm shift happening that, I noticed with the example of the notification you got that a package didn't clear through customs, and it seems like a lot of businesses in location have made money out of knowing what they don't know, going to a browser and finding out. Is the future when you don't know what you don't know and that you have to be told about it? So with your sensor-aware product, you don't know that there's a problem with that product. It only makes you aware of it when you need to know, when you don't know. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I think there's an absolute paradigm shift. And it's, it is a push technology. It's our world is fundamentally an event-based computing model. Almost everything I do is event-based. So the systems that are monitoring 8 million shipments a day, represent literally hundreds of millions of events around all of the activities. So the core functions of the systems are events. The hardest problem I've had to solve, is the tell me when something doesn't happen event. That's a harder problem. That's like saying everybody who's not here raise your hand. It's a more difficult problem, but we do have some interesting technologies that are predicting what events are supposed to occur, and because the processing capability is getting so powerful, what would have been just a terribly difficult problem of monitoring, and constantly swirling through the data and checking for those events is now becoming quite practical. That I can look at a predicted set of events for any journey of a system of a shipment, and then when a certain amount of time goes by that one of those predicted events doesn't occur, I can begin to alert around that and try and drive corrective action or at least notification. I mean, what customers really want is they understand that that storms happen, that occasionally an airplane might have a mechanical problem, those kinds of things, but they would really like to know about it because it allows they're counting on whether it's the very high end of a surgery that's scheduled and something around that, or whether it's just, core manufacturing cycles or distribution cycles that, needing to be notified. So even when it only happens very seldom, the event notification of what didn't happen is the most interesting computer science problem to solve.
Okay. One more? Do we have time for one more? Is there any other questions here? Yes, the gentleman here, hand up. Yes.
Hi. So, how do you continue to ride the Metcalf value of network connections in an app-based world without the web? How do you derive value from essentially siloing into apps this data that you were otherwise getting network effects out of?
Well, what happens, in my opinion, that makes that so interesting is that applications. I mean, I grew up. I've been building applications for 30 years, and applications used to look like very deep dive vertical, fully integrated stacks with, custom interfaces. And so I want to, point out that billing applications and, customer service applications, they were all very vertical. Today, what's happening in that cloud that I put out there is that applications are becoming much more horizontal in their nature. The ability to go pick off services in what kind of tritely gets called mashups, but is really a very important phenomenon that applications are being knocked horizontal. So it's no longer this big monolithic thing that I'm building that has all of the trappings and say, if you want something from customer service, you come to me. I'm trying to transform our business into just an array of services, whether it's address services, location services, label services, customer, price, all of those things are beginning to emerge as, discrete coarse-grained services that can be picked off horizontally and put together for a unique application. I think that in the ecosystem of the app economy and what's going on there, the same thing's happening. Something like StarWalk is a pick-off of 3 or 4 different fundamental services that are available that are uniquely assembled fairly quickly to create unique value. So, that's, in the old days, to build an application like that would have just been such a deep dive of, all of that stuff integrated. Today, it's like, well, I've got a compass, I've got location services, I've got a clock, I've got all these things, and I can just put them together and render it uniquely. So I hope
that's fascinating. One more quick moderator question here, which is, you've got some of the leading thinkers in the room here in terms of developers of location technology, network operators, developers of applications. So you've got a lot of the wireless industry folks in this room. What 1 or 2 things would you like to see from us going forward as you look at sort of the roadmap of what you want to be able to provide to your customers or move your business forward? What are some of our gaps, or what should we be working on as an industry?
Well, I really do think that it's this open API world. I mean, everybody likes to have a captive audience. And, and there's some great examples of those captive audiences, creating, long-lived market cycles. I mean, Apple has done a really good job of that. But what fundamentally wins in our world is, we've got all these heterogeneity inside of our infrastructure and devices. And so when you can offer me location services, when you can offer me address services, when you can offer me, capabilities that are easily integratable, into what I've already got, as opposed to having, I fundamentally believe that all of this technology is going through, as revolutionary as it is, it's still an evolutionary process that it's got to go through. So, I think you mentioned it in your opening remarks, that these API layers that are emerging that allow you to tap into this stuff, the people that do the best job of that and allowing me to integrate it into legacy dispatch systems and Qualcomms and things like that are going to fare well, because that's what I have to deal with. I'm saddled with so much legacy, and I can't afford to just rip it all out and go to.
So you're saying a lot of the piece parts are in place. It's just a matter of sort of pulling them together and being able to provide you with sort of the right layer of access into it. Right. That's great. That's a good marching orders for the rest of the afternoon. So thanks so much. That was terrific. Thank you for being here. Okay.